Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Dukub, and today we are going over the patch for November 22 in 2024. Welcome to Patch Review. So getting started, we are going to go into the most major updates that I think are most important for players to know, then working downwards from there. Disclaimer, this is just my opinion on what is most important, and the list could be moved around if you so desire, but without further ado, here are the 3 things to know in terms of major changes. The very first thing we're going to cover is the healing rebalance for the game. This update massively reduced everyone's healing as a way to minimize tankiness and prevent people from being unkillable throughout the entire match, and especially early game. My glorious Blue King aside, this healing reduction affected other heroes as well. In terms of Abrams, he went from a 14% to 11% decrease in Inferno Resilience regen, and his tier 3 upgrade for Inferno Resilience was from 7% to 5.5%. This also affects his ability to self-regen early game, and overall makes him less tanky in laning phase and early game. Abrams' Siphon life healing was reduced as well, going from 100% to 75% for heroes, and 50% to 40% for non-heroes. This is by far the biggest nerf for him, and it now makes Abrams super punishable, and he can now take damage like a normal character in laning and early game. Now, I don't think this necessarily changes how Abrams is played. It's still very melee heavy and close range based. It just means that extra regen, extra health, and other early game healing items is what heals you more now, so you're probably going to want to take those in laning and early game. Next up is Infernus, whose ability Catalyst had its tier 2 upgrade for lifesteal reduced from 15% to 12%, and the tier 3 upgrade for Catalyst was reduced from negative 40% health degen to negative 33%. Also, his Combustion tier 3 upgrade was reduced from 100% to 85%. This means you are now healing a lot less overall from Catalyst, which you rely more on Afterburn, and the lifesteal after a successful Combustion is now less effective, but still adds an extra 115 damage, so its use remains largely the same, essentially going in with Catalyst, shooting them up, getting more from Afterburn because of Catalyst, and getting a successful Combustion off will give you more damage and stun them, so Infernus still remains largely the same in terms of playstyle. Next up for you Lash mains out there, the Flog now only heals 65% versus heroes and 20% versus creeps. This is a decrease only by 5% on each part, which you might not think is a big hit, but it's actually a surprisingly big hit for Lash in early game and laning phase, because now you only heal 65% against heroes, and that can really add up during laning phase when you're getting damaged a lot, and you could use that extra 5%. So essentially you just play Lash a little more carefully, but still quite a bit of diving and reliance on your 3 just for healing. In the case of Viscus, the ball maxer himself, they nerfed his cube regen from 40 to 35, and his tier 2 upgrade for cube is reduced from plus 35 to plus 30, overall lowering his healing for cube, but not really, because it's not a huge hit. It still does a decent amount of healing, and you are still invulnerable. This just means that you need to be more careful about using your cube, because it doesn't heal as much. However, this doesn't mean it's useless. It's still an amazing ability, and it's pretty much the same in terms of healing. Up next is Moen Krill, whose ability Scorn was reduced from times 2 to times 1.6 for heroes. That means that it was only going to heal 1.6 times however much damage you deal with your Scorn instead of times 2. The same was done to his healing with creeps with Scorn, with it being down from 0.7 times to 0.6 times. This means that Moen Krill are going to need way more enemies in order to heal the same, but to be completely honest, this really only affects them laning to early game, because around mid game, you start getting other healing items that help boost the ability of your Scorn, and from there you don't really need Scorn in terms of double or times 1.6. It doesn't really matter, you heal a lot anyway. You could probably still crack open Line Pro and Torment Pulse and still do just fine. Up next is Warden, whose lifesteal from his ultimate Last Stand was reduced. His hero lifesteal is now 80% from the original 100%, and his non-hero lifesteal is now 20% instead of 50%. So Warden does not heal nearly as much from creeps, which is a huge hit for those early game fights where there are a lot of creeps in lane and not too many heroes. This simply means that he's going to rely more on his 3 and his 1, which obviously people already do. He has like a 53% win rate at the moment of recording in this video, so I don't think it's going to affect Warden too much. However, it will affect any builds around Warden that revolve around his ultimate. Because of the healing reduction, I'm not sure it's going to be that good anymore, but it's still going to be more than viable as long as you get the proper items to do it, and it'll probably result in some early game struggle and laning phase struggle, but that's fine. Up next is Ivy, and her changes consist of 15% to 12% reduction in Covenant Bullet lifesteal, and the max health heal for Stone Form reduced from 10% to 8%. as well as the tier 3 version of Stoneform getting a reduction from plus 20% to plus 16%. In terms of Ivy mains, the new thing is basically that Stoneform is less useful in terms of healing, but not by that much as long as you get the tier 3 upgrade. And in terms of other characters, you just don't have that much sustain anymore. Essentially just play more carefully and use Stoneform less for its healing and more for its stun, at least until you get the tier 3 upgrade. I could see this resulting in Ivy mains rushing for tier 3 upgrade, but let's see. Most Ivy builds now consist of a mix of Kudzu Bomb and a gun build, so perhaps you're not really going to see that many changes, just probably less reliance on the 3 for healing. Up next is Kelvin, who receives a reduction in healing for his tier 2 upgrade for Frost Grenade, going down from plus 125 to plus 100. The regen from his ultimate was also reduced from 120 to 110, as well as his tier 3 upgrade for his ultimate, which was reduced from plus 70 at 1.6 spirit power scaling to plus 60 at 1.4 spirit power scaling. This doesn't change much in terms of Kelvin. Your playstyle can still be delivery man and collecting boxes, and your frozen shelter still heals for a shit ton as long as you're properly scaling your spirit power. And even with the nerf, it doesn't really affect your healing all that much in terms of your ulti. Although the plus 25 from the Frost Grenade will be missed, it's not enough to warrant any major build changes. So Kelvin for me remains largely the same. It just means that if you want to play support Kelvin, it's more centered around Rescue Beam and Frozen Shelter, which again is kind of the norm. Here it comes. Up next, it's Yamato, who is also affected by this patch because you no longer heal from just being in your ultimate. You heal 15% of your max HP when you kill someone, which is a major change that I enjoy. This marks yet another departure from the previous Yamato ultimate where she was simply just immortal to the current Yamato ultimate where she is no longer immortal but heals every time she kills someone. Very nice. That pretty much does it for the healing section. There are smaller changes like Dynamo's Rejuve Aurora healing slightly less, but not by much. Wraith's full auto tier 3 lifesteal is reduced from 35% to 30%. Shiv's getting a slap on the wrist, basically 1% to everything. Grey Talon's tier 3 upgrade for random arrows is now 40% lifesteal instead of 50. And lastly, a whole set of healing items got nerfed slightly, basically everything minus 2% to 1%, except for Vampiric Burst, which I will point out because it has been reduced from 100% to 80% bullet lifesteal. But anyway, now moving on to the second thing about this major patch, matchmaking. One of the biggest changes this patch is that everyone gets a new rank. You get a new rank, you get a new rank, everybody gets a new rank. The great thing about this week's patch is that you now get MMR to change badges instantly. So as you pass a certain MMR, then you rank up, just how other games do it, like CSGO and Dota. However, this does come with the drawback that ranked mode is now gone and is mashed together with regular Deadlock, putting both sweats and casuals into one nasty amalgamation of a community that sometimes forgets that this is an early access and in development video game. But moving on once again, I'm going to use my current rank as an example of the new matchmaking system. So when I ended last week, I was Oracle 4, and it mixed my casual MMR with my ranked MMR, which resulted in me being in Phantom 1. This is all part of the huge rework on how ranks are going to be calculated, and I think this is one of the major things. I ranked up because my casual was pretty good, but my ranked was pretty bad. It's obviously because I queue with my friends, and when you have teamwork, you play a lot better, and you are more coordinated, right? Unfortunately, this is a tad broken at the moment, because I've known people who are like playing with me, and I have a friend who's Seeker 1 despite playing in Phantom lobbies. So I think the game doesn't really calculate it off wins and who you're playing against, and more of just how many games you've played if you're just starting, because one of my friends who's been winning quite a few games with us and performing not terribly, in the sense of he's not exactly positive, but he's also not super in the negative, right? He's performing decently, and in terms of other people, his damage, his player damage, his objective damage, and his healing is not bad. He's like somewhere in the middle of the whole team, right? He got Seeker 1, which is absolutely crazy because he's playing in Phantom lobbies. So at the moment, the system seems a little bit dodgy. Furthermore, there's a new tab called Skills tab, which shows you what heroes you're good at and your hero preferences. And mine says Abrams and Kelvin is what's going to get me a win, right? And is what I'm good at. But I do think this is more of just who you play more. Because at the moment, my win rate on Abrams is 64%, my win rate on Kelvin is actually 45%, and my win rate on Warden is 56%. So I'm not quite sure how they calculate it, because I have a higher win rate percentage on Warden, I get more kills on Warden, I do more objective damage, I do more player damage, I overall just perform more on Warden, and yet it says that I'm not really going to win on him, and I'm more likely to win on Kelvin. This could also just be a thing where it's just showing which character I like to play more, in which case I'm so sorry for the misinformation, because the hero preferences tab just seems a little odd to me at the moment. Anyway, to put a neat little bow on this, my final opinion is that I really love how they're planning to do the ranks now. I love constant updates. I think that should have always been the thing, but obviously the week by week was cool in its own way, where I had to like wait and I really had to play these games, although they seemed kind of weird, like, oh, if you played 7 games and won all 7, it was better than if you played 9 and only won 7 of them, right? It was kind of weird, but now this is a lot better. I just kind of wish they separated ranked and normal. Obviously, this is all subject to change because it's an early development game. People keep forgetting this, but I do think that moving forward, they shouldn't do this mishmash thing, because people like to separate casual and ranked. There are sweats, there are not sweats, you know, like you just need to kind of create that separation. But whatever, moving on from this long ass rant. The very last thing we are going to cover is the defense patch, which is what I'm going to call it because Valve just buffed Walkers and Patron. It's new, it's funky, and I love it. Walker's Stomp now deals 10% max HP as damage, a full stone form worth of healing pre-patch. Walkers now provide allied heroes with 25 bullet resist and spirit resistance. Walkers now have a resistance based on how many enemies are near it, and in the middle lane, Walkers have a health increase from 5,800 to 8,000. Side Walkers are 5,175 HP. This is one of the biggest changes to gameplay this patch, as we now get a return to a more classic MOBA, where towers actually matter and are scary as shit. Now defending is a lot easier and way more advantageous, which is great because now you are going to get fewer stomp games where as soon as one team gets momentum, they just stomp the hell out of you and take all of your walkers because they just have more power and they're just blobbing together and taking your walkers. I absolutely love this change. Before, split pushing was kind of risky because to defend against the walker push, you basically had to play under an NPC who couldn't really help and would just tank a little bit of damage, knowing full well that 3 people would do more damage to a walker than you can as like a split pusher. So it was always kind of risky and there was a little too much risk involved to really do it. Now, this is great because 2 people can defend against 5. I had a game yesterday where I just defended, me and a friend of mine defended against 5 people, which was absolutely crazy. The resistance base is now on screen and it is Mwad. Essentially having all 6 people pushing 1 walker gives it 40% resistance to damage, and even just having 3 gives it 16%. This, along with the health increase, damage increase, and hero resistance under Walker, now means defending under Walker is going to be a much better position and discourages people from just blobbing together to take out each Walker. And encourages more team play of split pushing, and oh, we should have multiple lanes being pushed. They're pushing one lane too much, have 2 people defend that and push the other lane because they're overcommitting. This is great. I think this encourages more communication amongst teams and absolutely improves how the game is going to be played, because you're no longer going to get those 35-minute games where you just get stomped, unless of course you're bad. Like if your team performs that badly where they're still getting stomped despite this update, holy shit, that's kind of mwad. Obviously I'm taking the piss, I'm joking around, but that's pretty much it. That does it for the whole video. To quickly summarize, a lot of healing rebalances in the game, so everyone is less tanky and doesn't have as much healing. And they kind of nerfed a lot of healing items as well, so you have to be really careful now. Well, not really careful, but careful. More careful than before, because everybody does less healing now. The new matchmaking system is a little bit whack, but it's okay. It's not broken per se. It's just that it's a little weird right now, so don't pay attention too much to your rank and just have fun with the game. It's still an amazing game, and it still can be played hyper competitively. Just don't take it too seriously. This game is still heavily leaning towards casual players because, again, it's in early development. And lastly, the Walker update is up and the defense is gonna be through the roof. I'm so excited for this patch. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This has been Patch Review.